Вон грибочек поднялся, хорошенький. Вон грибочек.
The Russian army's logistical backbone has been broken. Ukraine has struck two devastating blows, cutting off Russia's lifeline. On August 29th, the unmanned aerial vehicle distribution center in the Donetsk region was destroyed, and on September 18th, the ammunition depot of the 17th Tank Regiment of the 70th Motorized Rifle Division in Luhansk was leveled. But it wasn't just concrete structures that were hit. The target in Donetsk was not just an ordinary depot, it was the heartbeat of approximately 19,000 drones. These UAVs formed the basis of every discovery on the front line, every target marking, every deadly dive. This was the eyes and hands of the Russian army. Now those eyes are blind, those hands are shattered. In Luhansk, it wasn't just ammunition that exploded. The firepower of an entire region was silenced. Artillery batteries, Grad and Tornado G systems, they were all fed from that depot. Now, there is smoke and silence where that arsenal once stood. These attacks were not just military, they were strategic executions. The planning was flawless. It all began with the invisible heroes on the ground, Ukrainian partisans and resistance networks operating in the occupied territories. Agents of the ATESH partisan network secretly recorded the number of trucks entering and leaving the depot, the type of crates being transported, or military movements in the area using simple cell phones, and reported this information to Ukrainian intelligence. This initial information was combined with the second layer, namely signal intelligence. NATO and Ukrainian listening systems continuously monitored Russian military radio communications and data flows in the region. The third layer came from the sky, namely satellite intelligence. High-resolution satellite images provided by Western allies were examined around the clock by Ukrainian analysts. Analysts searched for changes around the seemingly ordinary warehouse pointed out by the partisans. Increased truck traffic throughout the night, new security measures, new trenches dug around buildings, or unusual heat signatures emanating from buildings when viewed with thermal cameras. All of these were evidence confirming the target's importance. When Ukraine combined the information from these three different sources, they all pointed to the same location. Now the operation to disrupt Russian logistics could begin. With targets this deep and this important, rather than expending Ukraine's limited supply of valuable missiles, a new strategy was deployed that would both surprise and defeat Russian air defenses. A multi-layered, intelligent UAV swarm attack. The UAVs used in this attack were not the small FPV drones we see on the front lines. These were developed by the Ukrainian defense industry in recent years, had a range of hundreds of kilometers, and could carry powerful warheads weighing between 20 and 50 kilograms. Most importantly, they were long-range kamikaze UAVs equipped with smart systems such as inertial navigation to counter Russian electronic warfare systems. The attack was carried out in several waves, like a symphony. In the darkness of night, dozens of decoy UAVs took off first. The task of some of these was to deliberately get caught by Russian air defense radars. When the Russian Pantsir and S-300 systems locked onto these fake targets and fired, they wasted valuable missiles and revealed their own positions. Other decoy UAVs carried electronic warfare modules to jam Russian radars and communication systems. The purpose of this first wave was to create gaps in the enemy's defense network and establish safe corridors for the next wave. Amid the chaos and electronic blackout created by the first wave, the main striking force, dozens of kamikaze UAVs carrying warheads, advanced toward their targets. These UAVs did not attack a single target, but as pre-programmed, attacked different targets simultaneously. It is estimated that 5 to 10 UAVs attacked the massive UAV depot in Donetsk simultaneously from different angles. As the first drones pierced the warehouse's roof and walls, those following behind entered through the holes, triggering a chain reaction that ignited thousands of drone batteries and explosives inside. A similar tactic was used for the ammunition depot in Luhansk. By targeting weak points such as the shelter's ventilation systems or doors, a hellish scene was created inside. Minutes after all this destruction, a third wave of UAVs, namely reconnaissance UAVs equipped with high-resolution cameras, flew over the scene to assess the damage. What does the destruction of 19,000 drones mean? In today's warfare, drones are no longer just eyes in the sky. They are also the ears, hands, and reflexes of the front line. These vehicles are the compass that guides a commander in the dark, the guide that helps an artillery battery pinpoint its target. And that is precisely why Russia has been trying to ramp up its production of FPV and reconnaissance drones to industrial levels over the past year. Engines imported from Iran, camera systems from China, and electronic circuits modified by Russian engineers all converged at that massive distribution center in Donetsk. It functioned like a factory, pumping drones to the Eastern Front. Ukrainian intelligence saw this center as a nerve node whose heartbeat needed to be stopped. And now, that center is just a pile of ashes. What was inside? The Molniya UAV, developed for rapid reconnaissance missions, gliding at low altitude, undetectable by enemy radar. The Boomerang, one of the most dangerous of the kamikaze class. This system, capable of thermal targeting without GPS guidance, was known as the nightmare of armored vehicles. The Vandal Novgorodsky, an extremely lightweight yet effective FPV drone. A specially designed model, shielded against electronic jamming and equipped with RF redundancy. The long-range reconnaissance platform Gorinik, used to track mobile units behind enemy lines. In addition to these, thousands of spare batteries, communication modules, video transmitters, control stations, RF amplifiers, and ground antennas were rendered unusable as a result of the attack. The destruction of this center means that Ukraine has destroyed Russia's massive drone fleet, which it had been trying to build for months before a single one even reached the front lines. This means that Ukraine has already won the drone superiority battle on the entire Eastern Front for the next few months. Now, every UAV buzzing above the head of a Russian soldier in the trenches will be known to be an enemy, not a friend. He will not be able to give target coordinates to his own artillery, nor will he be able to see what is happening in the Ukrainian positions ahead. In other words, he will be forced to wait blindly in his own trench, under the watchful eyes of hundreds of eyes tracking Ukraine's every move and ready to hunt him down. What does a tank regiment without ammunition do? That massive ammunition depot destroyed in Luhansk was not just a depot. It was the nerve center of the Russian army's combat capacity on the Eastern Front. This center housed thousands of ZUBK-14 high-precision tank munitions, hundreds of thousands of 152mm artillery shells, tens of thousands of RPGs, hand grenades, mines, and light weapon ammunition of various calibers. In other words, it carried the striking fist of an attack first, then the breath of the front line. What remained after the attack were traces of explosions that turned the ground upside down and war plans reduced to ashes. So, what does this mean? Imagine a tank regiment, T-72B3S, T-80US, equipped with thermal sights, reactive armor, laser guidance systems, each one a war machine worth millions of dollars. But what if they have no ammunition? Then these giant steel beasts are no different from metal coffins, silently waiting on their tracks, ready to become graves for their crews. They cannot hit any target. They cannot provide fire support to any infantry. In a Ukrainian offensive, they cannot respond to enemy artillery or suppress the line of fire. And worst of all, they cannot even defend themselves. This scenario completely undermines the classic doctrine inherited by Russia from the Soviets, because according to this doctrine, first, the enemy position is flattened with overwhelming artillery fire. Then armored units make their move. When the artillery runs out of ammunition and the tanks lose their capability, only the infantry remains. And infantry whose ammunition and drones have been destroyed can no longer fight. This is a paralysis that destroys not only an army's offensive power, but even its will to defend. However, every drone and every shell taken from a soldier on the front line is not just a tactical loss. It is also a new loss of billions of rubles added to the balance sheet of Russia's already bleeding war economy. To understand the economic devastation caused by these attacks, we must first concretize what was reduced to ashes that night. Ukraine destroyed not just a warehouse, but Russia's months of labor and billions of dollars of investment in a single night. Consider the more than 19,000 UAVs destroyed in Donetsk. Even assuming that a significant portion of these were simple FPV and reconnaissance drones commonly used on the front lines, conservatively estimating the average cost of each, including optics, batteries, motors, and assembly, would be between $5,000 and $10,000. Even with this simple calculation, the material value of the drones alone amounts to between $95 million and $190 million. However, considering that this depot also contained more advanced, long-range or thermal vision systems, which are more expensive, this figure is much higher. The cost of the ammunition depot destroyed in Luhansk is even more astronomical. Enough ammunition to keep a tank regiment fighting for months. That is, thousands of 125mm tank shells, rockets for multiple launch rocket systems such as Grad and Smerch, millions of machine gun bullets, mortar shells. The total value of all this is in the hundreds of millions of dollars. In short, it would not be an exaggeration to say that the direct cost of Ukraine's one-night operation to the Russian economy exceeded $500 million, or approximately 50 billion rubles. So the real question is, does the Russian economy have the power to compensate for these losses? On paper, the answer may seem to be yes. The Kremlin has put the entire country into a war economy mode. Factories are working 3 shifts, 24/7, switching from civilian to military production. The state is ruthlessly spending its last reserves in the National Welfare Fund and its oil revenues to keep this massive production machine running. However, this is an illusion. It is similar to the situation of a patient who is kept alive by high doses of adrenaline, with a predictable outcome. This is because the war economy has fatal weaknesses that are eating away at it from within. The first is technological dependence. No matter how many tank hulls or artillery shells Russia produces, it cannot manufacture the critical components that make a weapons system modern, namely microchips, precision optics, ball bearings, and advanced machine tools. These products cannot be imported directly from the West due to sanctions. Russia is trying to meet this need through complex and unreliable grey market networks established with China or third countries such as Kazakhstan and Turkey. The camera or navigation chip inside each of those 19,000 drones destroyed in Donetsk was a product of this fragile supply chain. Now it will take Russia months to find, purchase, and bring those 19,000 chips back into the country. This is a race against time that cannot be easily solved with money. Second, there is a human resources crisis. Due to mobilization and brain drain, Russia is facing a shortage of skilled workers and engineers, which is the most fundamental need of its industry. You can run factories 24/7, but if you don't have enough skilled people to operate those machines and assemble those weapons, you cannot meet your production targets. Third is the massive economic imbalance created by this total war production. While the Kremlin diverts all resources to tank, missile, and bullet production, the rest of the economy, everything that sustains civilian life, is literally left to rot. Every ruble spent to replace the $500 million worth of military equipment lost in this attack is a ruble that cannot be used to repair a burst heating pipe in Siberia. This is a cruel choice between the ammunition needs of a soldier at the front and the heating needs of a pensioner freezing at home. And this choice is destroying Russia's social fabric and its long-term economic future. As devastating as the military and economic effects of these attacks are, their psychological effects are just as devastating, if not more so. These operations have rewritten one of the most fundamental rules of war. There is no longer a rear. A logistics worker or truck driver working in a warehouse hundreds of kilometers behind the front lines does not see himself as being in a war. He is a civilian performing his job, transporting supplies to soldiers at the front. But not anymore. These attacks have shown that these logistics bases, which Russia considered safe, have actually turned into death traps. Now, every employee working in that warehouse will live in fear that a missile or drone could strike from the sky every night. This fear reduces productivity, increases errors, and most importantly, makes it impossible to find new personnel for these dangerous tasks. Who would want to sit on top of an ammunition depot hundreds of kilometers away from the front lines? News of these attacks reaches the trenches at the front within hours, and for the Russian soldier in that trench, this is not just news of a lost depot. It is the moment his hope is completely extinguished. He is no longer just fighting the Ukrainian army. He is also fighting the incompetence of his own command structure. He sees that the system that should protect him, that should bring him ammunition, can be destroyed so easily, so devastatingly. This is a blow that destroys the last shred of trust a soldier has in his commanders, in his own state. So, do these developments mean that the Eastern Front will completely collapse? No, at least not yet. A single night's attack cannot completely destroy a front line stretching hundreds of kilometers. However, such attacks are a textbook example of how major collapses begin. The destruction of the drone distribution center in Donetsk and the ammunition depot in Luhansk on the same night has created not just a gap in the front line, but a critical imbalance. This imbalance has created a pool of logistical and operational collapse at the center of the conflict map, right where the pulse of the war beats. This pool begins to expand, both strategically and psychologically, swallowing its surroundings. This attack has created a deep balloon in the Russian defense line, a shell that has been hollowed out from the inside but still appears solid from the outside. However, with Ukraine's long-range artillery, high-precision missiles, and drone swarms, this shell is ready to be pierced at any moment. This is not just an attack. It is a strategic point of entry for an encirclement. Now, a unique window has opened for Ukraine to penetrate deep into this weakened area, reach the rear lines, and launch an encirclement maneuver by splitting the front in two. How long this opportunity lasts depends on how quickly and by what means Russia intervenes. But the problem is that closing this gap is not easy. The Russian command will be forced to desperately pull reinforcements and ammunition from other fronts to patch this gap. This is like pulling the blanket off one area and leaving another exposed. Shifting troops from the south, the Melitopol line, around Zaporizhia, or the less active northern sectors means creating new areas of weakness in those regions. Moreover, these transfers are fraught with not only military but also logistical risks. With long-range systems like HIMARS and ATACMS, these troop movements become clear targets on Ukraine's radar. Worse still, Russia is no longer a building army, but has become a reactive army. The Kremlin, which previously attacked, planned, and exerted pressure on time and space, has now become a prisoner of Ukraine's strategic tempo. This is a turning point in terms of the nature of the war. Putin's general staff is now trapped in a reactive defense cycle, no longer proactive on the ground. Every Ukrainian attack is met with an attempt at repair, but every repair creates another fracture. This is not simply defending, it is trying to cope with the momentum of a system rolling downhill. And that is precisely why a front collapses in this manner. Thank you for watching our video. If you are also curious about where this fracture in Ukraine will lead and do not want to miss such in-depth analyses of the collapse of the Putin regime, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and share your thoughts on these developments with us in the comments. Remember, every comment, every like, and every subscription helps independent analysis reach more people. See you in the next videos.